Hello, I'm Carl Bratcher from Chaparral Motorsports, and today we're going to be talking about sand tires 101 for both ATVs, UTVs, and for motorcycles. But before we get there, I want to go ahead and tell you a quick story about the tires I have here in front of me. Several years ago, we had two of the identical, same year, make, model, and even color Razor Turbo 1000s. We went out to the sand dunes, and one of them was running a set of tensor regulators, this tire here in front of me, and the other was running a set of the CST Sandblast tires. Now this story is really interesting and tells you really how important paddle tires are, or sand tires are, if you're looking to put the most traction to the ground and become the most efficient that you can out on the sand. So the story goes like this. These two exactly equipped vehicles, except one had these Sandblast tires on and the other had the tensor regulators. They took off for about a 60-mile jaunt across the sand, tearing up some sand dunes. It was phenomenal. Now they get to the lunch point, they eat lunch, and they take a look at the fuel tanks of both of the vehicles. One of them, the one with the sand tires, had only used a quarter of a tank of fuel, and the other one was past half a tank. So basically, they needed to find fuel on the way home, which there was no fuel stations on that route. It turned out that they had to stop at a camp and get gas from somebody else in order for the car that had the tensor regulators mounted onto it to even be able to make it back to camp. That's just a testament to how efficient your car can be with the proper set of tires, and how an all-terrain tire such as this, that's literally rated for sand. If you're running sand, it says run 10 PSI. But that doesn't mean that this tire is going to be the best tire that you could possibly have out there for efficiency and putting power to the ground. Now let's jump into the tire warehouse and get into the details. When it comes to sand tire sizing, they're pretty much the same as motorcycle and ATV, UTV tire sizing, but you can see a slightly different tire size when looking at some paddle tire manufacturers. On motorcycles, for example, you're going to see a 110, 90, 19. This is the most common size of paddle tire you're going to find out there. The same thing goes for the ATV, UTV tires. This Sandblast tire over here is a 28, 12, 14. That's going to have the same type of sizing that you're going to find on most ATV and UTVs. So the abbreviated version that some sand tire manufacturers make is going to be the 3115. So 31 inches in height, and that 15 inch isn't going to be width, it's actually going to be the diameter of the wheel. Now why is that? Well, when you're running in sand, it really doesn't matter. I mean, you're running really low air pressures, you're going to get a lot of squish across the tire, so that width is going to change depending on how you are choosing to run your tires. So sometimes they just leave it off there completely. So again, 31 is going to be the height, 15 is the rim diameter, and on traditional reading of a tire size, that 28, 12, 14, that's going to be your height is the 28, the width of the tire is 12, and the rim size, on this example, is 14. Now that we got size down, let's talk about wheels specifically. As you notice, this here is a beadlock wheel, and this is a simulated beadlock. It looks cool, it has those little divots in it, but it is not a rim lock. So what a rim lock is a style of wheel that allows the bead of this tire to be sandwiched between this ring and the actual bead of the wheel. So this tire actually sits kind of outside. We'll take a look at what that looks like here in a second. But this is a traditional rolled bead. They both have beads on them, but the bead lock just has this extra ring that's going to sandwich the bead of the tire in between this outer ring and the rim itself. But why is a bead lock important? If you're running your tires aired down to the point that you have the potential of this bead popping off the rim or slipping inside of the tire, that's when a bead lock is going to be necessary. What we're looking at here is the bead of a traditional tire. So what's going to happen is this tire bead is going to slip over the rim, and then the air pressure that's put in the tire is going to push this bead against the rolled lip of the rim in order to create a seal. Now really simply, the way a bead lock works is you're going to go ahead and spoon this tire onto the rim on the back side the same you would with any other rim. And then on the front side, we're going to capture this tire. We're going to put this rim lock or bead lock onto the wheel, and then we're going to screw it in so that this sandwiches the bead of this tire between the outside of the rim and this rim lock. Now let's take a closer look at what that actually looks like. So this here is a traditional rolled bead or rolled rim. So basically you're going to spoon the tire into the center here. Air pressure is going to come and push that tire bead up into these two lips here, and the bead will seat. That's how a traditional rim works. Now let's take a look at a bead lock wheel. So a traditional bead lock has anywhere from 18 to 32 of these little screws right here. And these screws are what hold the rim lock, this strip right here, onto the wheel. So what's gonna happen with this style wheel here is this whole rim lock will be off of the wheel. You're then gonna spoon the tire onto this wheel like you would so that it can then seat up against the back wall here. And then you're gonna have the tire sitting on the top of the rim here. This whole rim lock portion will then sit on top of the tire, and then all of these screws will get put in place. That's gonna mean that this gap right here is gonna pinch against that tire, holding it in place, even in extreme low pressure situations. With a rim lock, you could run as little as 2 or 3 PSI in your tires and not have the fear of your tire slipping off the bead or spinning inside your wheel. A beadlock type setup solves 2 problems. Number 1, it's gonna keep your tire from slipping off of the bead in an extreme turning type situation at low air pressure. The second thing it's gonna do is it's gonna keep your rim itself from spinning inside the tire, causing you to lose traction. ATV wheels typically come in an 8, 10, or a 12-inch diameter. And then when it comes to widths, 7, 8, or 10 inches are the most common. Now let's talk about the differences in paddle types. Now with ATV, UTV tires, there are lots of different styles of paddles. We'll get into that in a second. Let's start with the motorcycles because they're much more simple. As you can see, all the paddles on these motorcycle tires look very similar. Some have slightly larger scoops than others, but just so you're aware, these 3 paddles right here are the exact same size. All of these are a 110, 90, 19. This guy right here is a 100, 90, 19. It's gonna be a little bit shorter in profile and a little bit narrower. Now, the difference between these really is the fact that this is a 10 paddle, an 8 paddle, and a 6 paddle tire. What that's gonna mean is the 6 paddle tire is gonna be a lot lighter. It's gonna spool up faster, and it's gonna have fewer paddles actually digging into the ground. So for a lower displacement motorcycle or a motorcycle that you want to race and be able to spool up as quick as possible, this is gonna be the tire for you. If you're on a more recreational bike and you wanna bite more sand and get more power out of it, if you will, and you're running a larger motorcycle, then the 8 and the 10-inch paddle would be probably the paddle you're gonna wanna look at. It's gonna allow you to be running lower RPMs. It's gonna allow you to be able to have more torque put to the ground and be able to displace more sand. Now, let's get on to the ATV and UTV tires. So when it comes to paddle styles, there are lots and lots of different options out there. For the larger cars, you're gonna see a straight paddle, you're gonna see an offset paddle, and a hybrid paddle, probably the 3 most popular. The straight paddle is gonna give you great general purpose use. It's gonna give you a great paddle in order to be able to dig sand and stay on top. If you've got a car that has a little bit less horsepower, you can do the staggered paddle. While having fewer paddles than this guy over here and smaller paddles, this is gonna give you the advantage of having a paddle tire without having the weight of this guy over here. And it's gonna perform much better than a traditional ATV tire, like that tensor tire that we looked at earlier. As for the ATVs go, these are a left and this is a right side paddle for the rear. So this is how they would be sitting on the vehicle itself. These are the V-style patterns. There are straight paddles for the quads, but these are probably some of the most popular. The V-style is definitely the way that people are going. This is a traditional V. It's gonna have that check mark toward the inside. The ITP tire, what they've done here is every other paddle, if you will, is a short paddle on the inside. They've done this because they believe that's gonna give you ultimate traction without increasing the weight of the tire very much at all. Now that we got your wheels dialed in, you know what size tires to look for, let's take a look at what style of sand tire is gonna be best for your particular application. When it comes to sand tires, we have straight paddles, V-shaped paddles, offset paddles, and a hybrid tire. Straight paddles hook up the best. Their design allows them to bite the terrain and propel your vehicle forward faster than any other sand tire on the market. However, they tend to require a larger turning radius and don't do well at side hilling. Offset paddle tires have an alternating inside to outside position. These tires are best for high performance cars looking to have lots of paddle with minimum weight. We then have the hybrid tire. These tires have paddles on the outside with ribs on the center and a smooth inside tread. These tires are great for four-wheel drive vehicles as the paddles on the outside dig for momentum, while the ribs help the vehicle steer, and the smooth inside limits the amount of sand that's thrown back into the vehicle. Front sand tires generally use either a minimalistic tread pattern or a rib or two or no tread pattern at all. When it comes to front sand tires, the options are just as great. Now, lots of people choose to run just a standard all-terrain tire up on the front. They put the paddle tires on the back. That gives them the proper momentum that they need, and then they still get a little bit of steering in the sand. But if you want the best optimal turning tire in the sand, tires such as these are going to give you that ability. Traditionally, we originally saw a straight rib down the center. That was the first thing that we saw. Then we saw multiple ribs. And then the general public came back and said, you know what, these are great, but I'm losing some of that ability to easily turn the wheel. So they started taking chunks out and alternating those ribs. Well, once they did that, they found that they weren't getting the bite that they really wanted, that they were used to with the straight rib. And we now have this guy. This has the solid rib in the center and then alternating strips here. This is going to allow you to be able to have that constant bite, but be able to turn these tires easier than you would on something with a solid rib. We then went to a tire such as this. This hybrid tire is fantastic. So this tire right here is great for a four-wheel drive car. So what's going to happen here is this tire is going to be able to do lots of digging and gripping. The reason it's soft or smooth on the inside here is that's going to minimize the amount of sand that's thrown up into the cab when the wheels are turned towards the vehicle. So a tire that's not shown in this lineup but is a very popular choice is called the smoothie tire. That's a tire that has almost no tread on it at all. This tire here is going to be great for being able to get grip. As soon as you turn that tire or start sliding sideways, these little louvers right here are going to be able to grip the sand. And this here is just going to allow you to have ultimate flotation because of its width, but you're still going to have that side bite when you're turning into a dune. While all these front tires are available, still one of the most common things that people do on a budget is run their stock all-terrain tires up front and a paddle tire in the rear. Now, another reason that people run paddle tires or sand-specific tires is due to weight. Typically, a sand tire or a paddle tire is much lighter in weight than a traditional all-terrain tire. Let's take a look at those tensor tires that we looked at earlier next to the paddle tires that we gave you in that initial story. Let's throw those on the scale and see what kind of weights we get. Now, if you remember that story that we began this whole video with about the tensor tire and the sand paddle tire, there's two reasons that tire guzzled gas compared to the other one. The mechanical advantage of the paddles themselves and the overall weight of the tire. Check this out. So here's that same tensor tire mounted to this wheel here. Let's lay it down so it doesn't fall over. So this tire is weighing in at 60.6 pounds and it doesn't have the mechanical advantage of a paddle. Now let's get the paddle up here and see what it looks like. All right, throwing the paddle up here on the table, also mounted to a rim. We're coming in at 42.45 pounds. That's almost a 20-pound weight savings in addition to the extra mechanical advantage that you're getting due to the paddle. Now let's take a look at a traditional ATV UTV tire. This here is an STI Roctane. We see these out of the dunes all the time. This is a 26-11-12. And it's weighing in at 32 pounds. Now, let's throw the equivalent sand tire on. Here we have an ITP Sandstar tire. Again, 26-11-12, weighing in at 16 pounds. That's nearly half the weight of that original tire. If we're talking about these tires specifically, if you were to put sand tires on all four corners of the car, you're looking at dropping that rotating mass by 60 pounds. And you're going to add mechanical advantage by putting paddles on the rear and some sort of rib tire up front. That just goes to show you how important specific tires are for the specific terrain that you're traversing. If you're headed to the sand, I urge you to at least put paddles on the rear, if not sand tires, on all four corners. The mechanical advantage of the paddles alone are going to be enough to give you a benefit of putting a sand paddle on. But saving half of this tire's weight in addition, that's a huge bonus. Well, there you have it. As you can see, there's more than one way to skin a cat and more than one way to climb a sand dune. There are lots of different versions and styles of sand tires, but the basics are you need to have the right size tire on the right size wheel for your particular vehicle. I'm Kyle Bratcher from Chaparral Motorsports. Thanks for joining us. Please hit that notification bell so you can see more videos like this come into your inbox. Please like and subscribe to this video if you found any of this information beneficial. I'm Kyle. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care and ride safe.